You're listening to All About Girls of Color podcast, a space dedicated to creating environments that allow girls to thrive. We explore issues and solutions that focus on removing obstacles so the natural joy and genius of girls can bloom. Join us as we dive into conversations all about girls of color and the women they become.
I'm Tinesia Conwright, the founder and executive director of Detour Empowers and the Fancy Teen Girls Leadership Academy.
I'm Gabriela Delgado, an educator and principal consultant for Saving Our Starfish.
And I'm Jandera Sykes, an equity, diversity, and inclusion certified organizational development coach and consultant and a partner in Arboreta Group.
Disclaimer. Our intention is to bring our whole selves to the conversations by bringing our professional and personal selves to each episode. Any views or opinions on the podcast are personal and belong solely to the creators and do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations that the creators may or may not have been associated with in a professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated.
Here we are. This is our first episode. We are so excited to launch this podcast. I'm Jandera Sykes with Arboreta Group, and I'm joined by my co-hosts.
I am Tinesia Conwright, the founder and executive director of Detour Empowers.
And I'm Gabby Delgado, founder of Saving Our Starfish.
All right. So with this being our first episode, we want to anchor our listeners in our stories. We feel it's important for all of you to know a little bit more about us and how we landed here today.
So to do this, we gave ourselves a little homework assignment, and the assignment was to write a note to our 7th grade self. And we chose this particular assignment because so much of our identity really starts at that critical pathways. That fork in the road happens for a lot of us in that middle school stage of life. So now that we are full-grown adult women, I think we've all learned a thing or two about life. And so we thought perhaps we need to do some deep reflecting to really anchor us and motivate us to continue the work that we do for our community. So, Tinesia, I believe you're going to kick us off.
I will kick us off. And so with that said, I have a few things that I want to tell my 7th grade self. As I reflect on the person I was, the girl that I was in the 7th grade, I'll provide some context. It was my first year in Catholic school, okay? I'm talking about uniforms every day Catholic school. And this was my first time in a private school. I had been in public education, my entire educational career. And the 7th grade, I wanted to spend more time with my dad and his family. And my other siblings were going to this Catholic school. So I thought, I'm going to say I want to go to the Catholic school so I could spend more time with my dad. And that is what ended up happening. And it was very, very different for me. And I felt like I did not belong. I was the only black girl in the class. There was one other black boy, and we were the only 2 black kids in the entire class. So that really gave me a just kind of feeling of being on the outskirts of the core group in which I felt the school was there to support. I just really felt different, just really, really different.
Yeah.
In addition to having to wear a skirt every day, which you guys know, I don't do skirts or dresses. So that it was just an uncomfortable. That's what it is. It was a very uncomfortable experience for me, and I've often been the only or the first. In elementary school, I attended Florence Elementary in Hillcrest and was one of the few black girls in class. And so, SDSU, one of the few black girls in class.
Yeah.
USD, one of the few black girls in class. And so back in 7th grade, what I would tell myself is that you belong, you fit, and to value your uniqueness, because that's something that really became an insecurity. Do I belong here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know if I belong here or not, And when you're insecure and uncomfortable, you don't really excel because you're insecure and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I would tell myself that you belong, that you have what it takes to be here. You have what it takes to stay and remain here and to excel and do well, and honor your uniqueness.
Yeah.
Honor it, because it's what you bring into the group. You know what I mean? Like, you are here representing a lot of different things. And I won't even say any of them because there's so many different things. So be positive and shine, right? Shine.
And I think those are all so important for young people at that age to hear.
Yeah.
We've done that work with girls ourselves in the community or in schools. So when I think back to who I was in 7th grade, I remember someone saying, what the best thing about middle school is? It's going to end. And I thought, that would have been key for me to know.
Right,
Thank you for telling me.
Yeah.
I heard that as an adult, but I thought, that's actually so important to tell students.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
okay.
Right.
It's this awkward stage. You're going through a lot. When I think back, I would tell myself that you got this. And this constant sweating the small stuff or feeling like you have to be perfect in every little way, that isn't the case, and it doesn't have to be. And so always putting that extra pressure on myself. I felt that as a kid, I've always been that achiever of like, I need to make sure everything's put together because I don't want people asking kind of what's happening in the home and, kind of mind your own business because everything's peachy and rosy, and it wasn't. Yeah. And so for me, it was, having very limited resources at that age was hard. It was, I'd see students who I thought, it's the thing. You would go to the stores during summer to buy new clothes for the new school year. Well, that's new to an immigrant family. You don't do that. And so we thought, hey, Mom, this is like a thing they do. We can't wear the same clothes. And that was a struggle. For my parents, it was, you can't just be buying new outfits for every day of the week. And so for me, it was just not feeling like I fit in because I didn't have those resources oftentimes. But then also when I reflect, I realize, give yourself some slack. You got this. It will be fine. You just got to know how to ride this out. So a lot of lessons learned, but it was a tough time. I didn't enjoy, peers very much at that. I had good friends, but people are hard in middle school and will criticize for every little thing. And again, when you're the kid that doesn't always have, you feel like, oh my gosh, they're going to know that, I never owned a pair of Nikes. I can't afford that. I would go to Payless, and even that was like a big deal. And, kind of feeling embarrassed at times that we didn't have resources, so trying to hide that. Now I'm like, I don't care.
In my neighborhood, you would have been shamed for those Payless shoes. I mean, I remember I grew up in Carson, California, and we used to call kids that didn't have name brand shoes, you got them Alpha Beta specials on. Right, right, which was a grocery store with the cheap shoes, and that's when I think about that as an adult. I mean, that's just so cruel,
right? Right.
You don't want to be with the Alpha Beta specials, right? No, and I'm just thinking, all these years I've known you, Tinesia, I didn't know we shared the Catholic school thing. I went to Catholic school from public school in 6th grade because I needed more structure, right? So it was kind of like punishment for me to be sent, to Catholic school. And it was a lot more rigid than my public school experience.
Yeah. For me, it was small. I had gone from, I went to O'Farrell in the 6th grade, and there was a lot of independence that we got because we got the opportunity to go from like class to class, shifting periods. And the Catholic school was just one room all day. Yeah. So it was a really hard shift, and one that I never really got used to. I ended up asking to return to O'Farrell for the 8th grade. Yeah. Because it was like, okay, 1 year, is all I could do. But I think, what was underlying was that it really wasn't about the school. It was me wanting to spend more time with my dad. Yeah. And perhaps if we would have been able to have a conversation about that need that was not being fulfilled, I would have never had the Catholic school experience. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because I was only able to spend time with him on weekends. You know what I mean? And I wanted to go over there more. So that I feel like it's a whole nother issue
Yeah.
that was going on under the surface.
Yeah.
At that time. That's why I say it's this pitchfork oftentimes in the road for a lot of young people, because so much of what we see in those 2 to 3 years, you think that these seeds are planted, and oftentimes we think, oh, if they just have exposure to sports and clubs, they're going to be fine. And you realize that's like surface level stuff.
Yeah.
There's things that sometimes we're not aware that people might be encountering or dealing with, and nobody would have known to ask to say, well, let's dig a little bit deeper with Tinesia to see what's really going on. Like no one gets to the root of it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then later, it's like we're these I always look at people like puzzle pieces where that's just a piece of you, but no one had all these other pieces to put together this entire picture. And that oftentimes happens with girls of color.
Yeah.
Is that we see something on the outside, or that might say, oh, well, look at what the school is reporting. And I can tell you, I have assumptions about this. Students like, they're assumptions, because you're only going off of what these statistics are telling you or what grade levels are telling you. But no one's ever really painting you this accurate picture, because oftentimes they don't bother to even ask the girl herself.
Yeah.
Right. And they're limiting their judgment to their exposure to that young lady only within school hours, or only within the hour that they have the student, which is really unfair.
And then we got to think about, I'm thinking about myself, at that age, and I had a longing to be with my father. But I also had like that family rule that boys came first, So I actually had a conversation with my father. You need to spend more time with us, right? Being the advocate. But my little brother needs you more than I do. And I'm in 7th grade saying that, like putting the needs of others first when I wanted him so desperately myself, And I just kind of wonder sometimes, do we as women of color do that by default? Put the needs of others before ourselves.
Yeah, or learn it at such a young age to where it becomes normalized.
Yeah.
So, it's just a normal behavior that's not looked upon as something being wrong with it.
And it's an expectation,
too,
right? That you're just expected to do these things because, well, you're the oldest of the family, or you're the girl in the family, so then you have to take on certain responsibilities. There's research that shows why do girls have to take on these caretaking roles from a young age? Well, because oftentimes society kind of puts that pressure on them, and then that transfers over to who we are as people, and we carry that into work, we carry that into home life, and that comes at a cost. I mean, we all have friends where we say they've hit that burnout stage, or they're not taking care of themselves, or they're aging faster than they should be because they're that constant caregiver, and you feel like, I don't know how to say no. This is kind of what we do in my family or in my culture. And so it's tough, I think, to navigate those journeys. And, part of us coming together, I think it's a passion that we all have for serving girls of color, being women of color, and being around all of you. I'm always energized. I'm always laughing when we're together. And I hope that...
You gotta laugh.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you have to. What else are you going to do, right?
Gallows humor, right? What
Yes.
are you gonna do? Yeah. But sometimes, but we are really funny though. But there is a coping element to the laughter. It really is.
But I think this, like something like this, for other women of color and people who are not women of color, to just learn a little bit about our stories and who we are, so that there isn't this judgment, or there isn't this different expectation that we are sometimes held to, where it's not across the board for everyone.
Yeah.
And just understanding us. We've often had these conversations where girls will be portrayed, especially Black girls, they're angry. And I tell people, what are you even basing that comment on? The fact that she pushed back and challenged you? But would you have said that about a white student saying that? But why is it okay to put Black girls in one category and not another?
And my response to that would be, this is a hint on what my note says to my 7th grader. So? So she's angry. So? You're the adult. What is she going to do to you? I mean, why is her anger threatening? She's 12.
Right.
Or
Right?
what's driving that? If you feel like that,
what's the
if that's hurting
underlying-
her,
Yes.
how about you ask, let me learn a little bit more about what could possibly be happening here.
Yeah.
Right? That I'm not being reflective on my end
Yeah.
and say, am I just making an assumption? Like maybe I need a pause, but that's not always the case. So I'd love to hear from you, Jandera. So tell
Okay,
us more.
All right, here's my note. All right, I'm passing this note to her. She's in, 7th grade in Miss Alpaw's class at St. Philomena Elementary School in Carson, California. And I would say to her, you know what? It's okay to be angry because your anger is telling you that this is bullshit that you see, right? Right? And you're going to need that skill when you're grown to be able to set boundaries and tell people, nah, I'm not doing that, So hold your anger close, when they say you have an attitude, okay, right? I was Jan then. I turned Jandera when I turned 18. And I would say, Jan, just be strategic about it. Don't believe them when they say that you have an attitude and that is bad. And that your anger is your ability to see reality. And it is messed up right now,
Yeah.
right? So just hold on. This is not going to last forever, High school ain't going to be that much better. But, when you get to college, it's going to take a turn for the better. So just hold on and hang in there and know that what you know to be true is true. I was the kind of kid that I wasn't othered, but I was the one that could bounce along to various social groups but not be completely part of them. Like I could hang out with the nerds for a while. I could go hang out with the cheerleaders for a while and the jocks. And I had enough personality, like student government. Obviously, I was in student government, right? To have the little constituencies and be able to bump back and forth between them. But I never felt like everybody saw the whole me. That I only showed the acceptable parts. So I grew up in a family that praised performance and looking good. You didn't have to be good, but you got to look good. It got to be smooth from the outside, You got to look good. So I had this really performance quality that served me as an adult, but is very limiting, So in middle school, I never felt like I really belonged completely. I felt like I was a performer for these different groups. I was more myself, when I went to college, and that's when I became Jandera, when I turned 18, and I was paying my own bills, And my family would kind of call me Jan. What's your Brady Bunch? I mean, like, how white can you be, right? Jan, right? And I used to say stuff, Jan is dead.
Oh, my dramatic. You killed her off. Shit.
And I would,
R.I.P. Jan.
Yeah. And I would refuse to
artist
answer.
formerly known.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how we're going to introduce you in the next podcast.
Yeah. So it was this whole thing, and it was the first time that my family actually adjusted to me because I wouldn't answer them. Like, Mama, what you gonna do? I'm paying my own way, right? So yeah. That's why I just love Jandera. Because
I love Jandera too.
Yeah, yes. And people always trying to say, do you have a nickname? I'm like, no.
This is who I am.
Can I call you Jan? No.
This is it.
Yeah, this is it. I'm gonna have problems pronouncing your name. Okay. You know what I mean? It's like,
That sounds like a personal problem.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's so funny because my name is Tinesia. However, my dad's side calls me Tinesia, which is not correct, but they're not changing it. And here I am over 40. But because when I was in the 7th grade and around that age, I liked Tinesia because it was more common. So they got used to it. It stuck. But when I came into my own and was like, hey, my name is really Tinesia, right? They were like, well, we've been calling you Tinesia for your whole life. So we're not changing it. So that's always a joke in my family. You'll know who's from my mom's side because they call me Tinesia, and who's from my dad's side because they call me Tinesia.
Got 2 names.
Yes. But it's just an interesting journey how we've all come into our own at some point in time and just kind of wanted to get rid of the previous and former self.
It's like skin you shed.
Yeah.
Right? It's like leave the 7th grade self, you leave the high school self, like you've arrived.
Right.
And so and all of that comes, there's blood, sweat, and tears in that journey for all of us, right? And hardships, and I wouldn't trade it. I everything I've gone through, I said no, because there's lessons learned and all that, and that's why I am who I am now. It would have been nice to have some dedicated mentorship geared towards navigating the world as a woman of color. And when I look back now, I think, where would I have arrived at a different place in my career had I received that support early on, or what would it have turned out to be? I mean, I've done pretty well for myself. I'm not trying to tell a sob story. I'm happy, but I also wonder how could it have been differently if I had exposure to these women mentors. I always had good friends, but friends they're your age typically. Yeah. So that's why I've always gravitated towards women of color to say, well, okay, you can probably, drop some knowledge where I could benefit from that and help me grow. And oftentimes the world isn't set up for us to have that naturally. I feel like we have to go out of our way. But, but we shed skin on this journey. We just do. And so I appreciate you all being on this journey with us. And I wonder maybe we could share a little bit about, so our listeners have some context. How did they land here? How'd these 3 women get together?
Wait. What would you tell yourself?
Oh, so
you forgot.
I was saying for myself, I wrote bullet points. I'm type A, so of course I did a list. I did a whole list. So I thought, well, I don't want to read off a whole list on the episode. But for me, after hearing Tinesia talk, I thought, it would have been, don't sweat this small stuff. Like, I put this pressure on myself all of the time to be a success. And I know for me, when I trace, where does that come from? My parents moved here. We came to the U.S. I was a baby. I was born right across the border in Tijuana. And so this pressure that they didn't put on us, I think my sisters we all did this naturally of they sacrificed and left their family to come here. And when we would hear as kids, we are here because of you. You feel this pressure of I can't fuck it up. Yeah. I can't, my mom cleaned houses. I'm thinking, and she would take us on summer. Let me tell you, it'd be down in Coronado Cays, these beautiful homes. Yeah. And I remember thinking as a kid, I am never going to clean I don't even want to clean my own home. I'm sure as hell not going to clean someone's house. And that's noble, hard work, but I thought, I want a different life. Yeah. And so when I would see my mom doing that, I thought, I can't screw up school. I can't do it because that would be the biggest slap in the face to both her and my dad that did jobs that they didn't. They were always low-paying jobs where people typically aren't even greeted when you see them. Yeah. I'm always aware of that. I always go out of my way and acknowledge people that are kind of the behind the scenes at a restaurant, or if you ever just sit and watch at a restaurant when the person comes over to remove the plate, sometimes people don't even acknowledge that they're doing that. And so I always try to thank you for doing that. Yeah, and I pile the plates together. I clean the table before I leave because just feel like those are my parents in one way or another. And so, but it's this pressure of like, I have to do well and I have to be, in clubs and in sports because I don't want them to ever feel like what they did was in vain. Yeah. And I know now, I think, my parents would say, we were proud a long time ago. You could stop. But it's this drive. I think being an immigrant, you naturally feel like this is a big deal to move and leave. My mom's the only one of all of her siblings to be in the U.S. They all were like, no, we're all good living in
Yeah.
Mexico. We don't want to move.
Yeah, and you're not the only one that put that pressure on you. I mean, like one of my issues with the whole dreamer message, is the dreamers are saying, look at what we accomplished. We deserve to be here. I'm here for the D+ student, that's here.
Right.
Right? I mean, it's like that expectation put on immigrants to be above and beyond what the average American is. It's just so unfair.
Because you feel like then, no, they're going to say you're the stereotype. Oh, no.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
and it's just, again, that additional layer of pressure. So,
It's almost like everyone's looking at you.
yes, because, especially in what's happened in the last few years where people, they aren't, so welcoming to people from different countries. And you think, okay, well, my family comes from Mexico. We didn't have children at 15, but that's a stereotype is, they all have young kids. Okay, no, that didn't happen. Oh, you have people in jail. No, we don't have relatives that went to prison. We're college educated. But it's this one type of narrative that is constantly told. So you feel like if I ever slip up or do something, that would, connect to a stereotype, I feel like, I'm letting everyone down.
Yeah.
And not even just with your family, just as a whole. I feel like I'm letting my people down if I'm contributing to that very myopic narrative, which is not true of everyone.
Yeah.
So just that pressure,
Yeah.
that I think I've just told my 7th grade, so chill out. I mentioned I did a bullet list.
be fine.
I'm type A, obviously. I feel that I just am. You all know me. I'm like, let me do my little notes. And I mean, so I know it comes from that. But I've learned to have it serve me well.
Yeah.
In other respects too. But
It's a balancing act.
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
we're good jugglers.
Yeah.
Speaking of jugglers, so we're juggling multiple things today.
Yeah.
Did we want to talk about how we met?
Yeah, so I think people might wonder, how did they all come together? It's not like we went to school together.
No.
And so they might want to know, how did this all come to
How
be?
did we get together? So as I mentioned, I'm the founder of Detour Empowers, and I was seeking to learn more about how to effectively run girls groups. We are a mentoring program and leadership academy for teen girls. And so I want to call you the head honcho.
Oh, you just promoted me.
And so at that time, Gabby was providing trainings because she had a lot of experience and a lot of research in this field for this work. And so I began to take all of her trainings that she ever offered. I was there for all of them. And so she and I started our friendship there because she was seeing me so often.
I got to get to know this chick who's showing up at all my workshops.
Right. And always offering to support. And she would have a segment of each training where each person can go around and say what they needed and what they had to offer. And so we really got to know each other and got to work together through that medium. And so she... The company that she was working for kind of got rid of that department, and the trainings were no longer available. Yeah. And so like about a year or two later, I was like, Gabby, hey, we need to bring back those trainings because they were very valuable to me. And there are people out here that need those trainings, and we're a community, so let's bring it back. And so she and I created All About Girls of Color, which is a series of different trainings highlighting statistics and best practices and just ways to connect pertaining to issues affecting and impacting girls of color. And so she and I started doing All About Girls of Color trainings for teachers, principals, counselors, community members, anyone who's interested in learning how to support girls of color. And so through that, we partnered with Monica Montgomery, council member Monica Montgomery, to do a screening on the push out. And that is where Jandera came on board. And so Jandera and I had worked together because she's a consultant and she was helping us put together some papers on the work that we were doing with Detour. So I was a client of Jandera's, and so she came to the screening and just really connected with the message behind the push out that was created
It
by
was my
Monique Morris.
story. It was my story on film. It was my story. I mean, I just so related to that. You know,
Yeah.
and I had some guilt around opportunity that I missed that I'll share with later. But go ahead.
Yeah. And so, of course, the push out touches on, expulsions and detentions pertaining to girls of color being way higher than, other races, and the harm in that, the trauma in that. So we all three came together and, in essence, created the All About Girls of Color Collective because it was always my vision to create an ecosystem of different partners supporting the girls that we mentored. We are definitely helping in one part of the girls' lives as far as the development, growth and development, the mentoring, the positive representations of women of color and things of that nature. However, we do realize that we're one part and we need more parts of the ecosystem in order to fully support their growth and development to help them thrive. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah.
Well, I just like to just build on it a bit with that film. Because, we had a professional relationship and you invited me to the film. And, a couple of years before that film, I lived in southeastern San Diego, and I used to work out in a park that was right next to a middle school. And as I would do the laps, a brisk walk, not run. If I would do, my laps around the park, I could see into the eating area of the middle school. And one day I witnessed this young black girl interaction with her young white teacher. And the teacher was telling her, get that look off your face. Get that attitude off your face. And I just watched this young girl just stuff it down and get that blank look that I use at staff meetings. Right. Still, you know what I mean? That kind of like placid blank look. And I just watched her stuff all her emotions down to get rid of the quote unquote attitude. And I just remember standing there and looking at that and being frozen. And I didn't do anything. And I had thought about it for years, what I should have done. I should have gone in there. I should have asked for the principal. I should have said I witnessed this interaction that I don't know the history of it, but that's not cool. That's harmful. I should have advocated for that girl, and I didn't, and I froze. And I saw the movie, and I'm sitting in the back thinking, okay, Tinesia invited me to this movie. I'm going to make an appearance and say hey and leave.
Typical networking.
Right? And so I'm in the back, and I'm tearing up, and I'm just watching that dynamic is a thing. The adultification of black girls, the disallowing of any legitimate emotion other than being funny and anticipating your needs. I mean, it was just so horrible to watch that, right? And so that's why I joined you guys. It's first of all, to make amends to that girl, right? And to kind of develop the policies and changes in the system that teachers like that young white woman who probably was earnest, to understand the damage that does, right? And that's not cool, right? You're talking to a 12-year-old, right, kind of thing. And is that much control necessary? What does that do to her nervous system to stuff her emotions down like that? I mean, to kind of do some systemic education in these systems on what do we do to our girls of color? Like, what are we doing to them? What are our expectations?
And how can we do better? Right?
How can we do better?
Like
Yeah.
you're saying it could be that people should know but don't know.
Yeah.
Right. And so we've had those conversations. And so when we have this opportunity to be able to use a platform such as a podcast to get the message out, to connect with all of our listeners so that they learn more, not just about us, but also just about girls and women of color. When we all came together and we had a community meeting, I remember being in that room. We had over 60 women who came, and you facilitated, Jandera.
Yeah.
That's the first day that I met you.
Yeah.
You had us go around once we had done a lot of individual and team discussions. We charted different possible topics that we all really wanted to focus on.
Yeah.
And the number one topic was that women in that group identified was having an ongoing collaborative space where they could support and learn from one another.
Yeah.
And I just thought it's because these spaces just don't naturally exist.
Yeah, we
And
could
so-
create them.
Right. And so this is another version and extension of that, really. So we're hoping that, if you're listening to the podcast, that you stick with us for this season. We're going to have a variety of different experts and people who are activists, advocates for young women of color. And we welcome rich conversations that will yield a positive change. We want to be able to give people a resource and a possible tool that they could use in their daily interactions and whatever their role might be interacting with young people. If you do no work with young people, you say, well, I don't work for a school, I don't work for a nonprofit. Well, do you ever interact with a woman of color? Well, this might be helpful to you.
Yeah.
Just to understand who we are as people so that we can, again, leverage our resources, our talents to just do better.
To do better and do beyond, and to do beyond, and I just got to stress in a systemic way.
Yes.
Because, so often we do the default position that all girls of color need are confidence. No. Confidence is good, but you need some resources too.
Right.
Right? You need some resources. And I just got to say that,
And
right?
definitely, because you can have the confidence and the grades and everything that it takes to get to college, but if you can't pay for it,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Or if you are unable to have those connections that other people have in order to get the job, to get the internship, to get the whatever, that social capital, that's important as well.
And also, being a student in middle school, high school with a 3.5 GPA as a girl of color, but you also are doing most of the housework at home. You got a part-time job.
Right.
You have all these other legitimate barriers and obstacles. That 3.5 is really different than a 4.0 of a more affluent kid that, has a maid that comes in and cleans their room, right? And so the approach would be for the systems to understand that.
Yeah.
And to take that into account and factor that into account with concrete supports for that,
Right.
and allowances for that, because not everybody's reality is the same.
No, it's
Not
not.
everybody's starting point is the same.
Right.
So that's like the equity piece,
Right.
of acknowledging that, to inform systems that,
Right.
of that aspect of it. We have a seventh grader, a actual seventh grader, not us as adults remembering our seventh grader, but an actual seventh grader that has a question for us that we have not heard before.
Right.
So we're going to answer.
One of the fancy girls.
Yes. All right.
She's asking, how can she stay social and also gear her head towards academics at the same time?
Ooh.
Balance.
The balance.
Oh, man.
I think we're all still trying to get that one out.
So the question is, how do you stay social but yet still keep your eye on the prize and making sure academics are on point?
Yeah.
I'm going to sound really old with my answer. And my answer would be, you can do both. And you need to be, I would recommend, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to recommend that you think really carefully about who your social circle is. And I say that because, you kind of rise and fall with your crew. I mean, like when you think about like the big performers of these days, like, I just kind of lost it, but who's Beyonce? Who's her husband? Who's her
Jay-Z.
husband? Okay, Jay-Z and Pharrell and Jamie Foxx used to hang out before they became famous. So when you think about like your crew, you want your social crew to be folks that have the same dreams that you do.
Agreed.
Which will make academics and social balance easier, right? So that would be my recommendation, is find your tribe that shares your dream.
I definitely agree. I would say keep the main thing. And the main thing is school at your age, right? Because
Oh, you sound old.
that is what you are here to do. And I definitely think that being social is an important part of your growth and development. However, it's not the main part. But I agree with what Jandera is saying as well, because, everyone should have work to do. So I would kind of be worried if your friends never had any work to do, because, as Jandera said, what path are they on? And usually when you're on the same path, you have about the same amount of free time, which is not a lot. You know what I mean? So make the most of that. Definitely have fun, be well-rounded, and do things that you're interested in, but keep the main thing the main.
Yeah.
I think, Val, you have one other question for us.
What can she look forward to in 7th grade?
Oh.
Ooh, you gave us a hard one. What can you look? You know what? I'll say this. What you can look forward to is an opportunity to be different, try different things. And sometimes in certain schools, you might have different programming. There might be sports that are offered. There might be drama that's offered. So typically when someone moves from that elementary to middle school, it's a transition. So I just say be excited about the different opportunities and don't say no to anything. Even if your friends say, well, I don't want to try out for that. I don't think that's going to be fun. If you want to, just try it. So keep that yes mentality and just be open to things. So there are things to look forward to. You just have to have that open mentality and mindset to the opportunities for growth and learning if you choose to. So I just say remain open and good things will present themselves.
Yes, and you will begin to get more independent. That was something that I appreciated. I kind of mentioned earlier, 6th grade for me and 8th grade, being able to go from class to class to class. That was very important to me. Also taught me time management, because if you have 5 minutes during the passing period, you have to sum up your conversations with your friends during that passing period. So the independence, embrace it, learn from it, grow from it.
And I would add that in 7th grade, you have an opportunity to really watch how adults make decisions. Because you got kind of a little understanding, you have more of an understanding of how the world works, right? So just be aware of how decisions are made, because you're going to need to think about that and store that when you get into high school and when you get into an adult, to understand how that system kind of works. I don't know if that makes sense, but I remember like really watching how Sister Elizabeth made that decision. You know what I mean? Like, what was the data that she used, right? And did it make sense? And I get it. What Father thought is the most important thing in her decision, not the facts of the situation. Okay, now now I get it, right? So it's you could kind of see how decisions get made, which is really an important thing to understand how that process works. That's what I would tell them.
Nice.
Well, thank you to the two young women who volunteered to pose questions. We hope that they find our answers fulfilling. If not, we invite them to have a conversation with us. So on behalf of the All About Girls of Color podcast, I'm Gabby Delgado.
I'm Tinesia Conwright.
And I'm Jandera Sykes.
Thanks for listening. This podcast is made possible by the California Commission on the Status of Women and Girls. Additional sponsors include San Diego County Employees Charitable Organization. You can access all episodes and connect with us via email at allaboutgirlsofcolor.com.